Get on the next earliest available flight you possibly can. Get to my house. I will take care of you. That alone, without knowing the rest of the story, may seem very ominous and even threatening. Listen for the rest of the story. Hi there, and thank you for joining us on the Overcomers Overcoming podcast. We feature those who are in the process of overcoming or have overcome any type of life encounter, life obstacle that at the time seemed to be almost insurmountable. With this podcast, we have three objectives in mind. Our first objective is we want you to know with a confident resolve you are not alone. We want to work with you. We want you to know there are others who are working with you, who want to help you through whatever you are encountering, and together we will get through whatever you're experiencing.
Our second objective is there are multiple options for any life encounter you are facing. We want to help you develop a resolve that there are various options and solutions to any life dilemma.
Our third objective is to help you with critical thinking skills. If you're encountering something that was possibly a decision you made sometime in the past, and if you had the opportunity for a life redo, you would make a different decision. We want to help you with those critical thinking skills that can help you make an informed decision and not encounter what you're going through at the moment. We are the Cooper Culture, a veteran-owned business. We work with business personnel and families to develop and sustain connected relationship cultures within their families and organizations. That type organization is one where people feel wanted, appreciated, and genuinely a part of that organization. I'm with my wife and business partner, Marty, who is helping me facilitate this podcast. Today we feature Joan Quinlan for a second episode. She continues to go into her story and go a little bit deeper with her sobriety and the problems she had with drinking. It is known as substance abuse disorder. She discusses the reasons behind it, at least in her case, and she had a friend that helped her out of what was her substance abuse, and she's got a great story. Marty, what are some takeaways we can learn from Joan?
Ron, I'm glad Joan explained her time when she said, "This is it, I can't do this anymore." When she said she was down on her knees. Someone out there that is at that point, again, this is a good podcast to listen to Joan and how she was able to get up and move on.
You may know someone within your influence that needs some support. They are near the breaking point. They just need someone to reach out and say, "I care." Let's listen and learn together. Joan, it's good to have you back with us. For our listeners who may be joining us for the first time with you, Joan, you have taken our listeners through a brief part of your life. You've experienced what I called a bucket load of trauma. That's a very elementary term, and I certainly do not mean to marginalize anything you and our listeners have experienced with that term. I just mean to say you've experienced different things in life. You introduced us to the term SUD, which is substance use disorder. We're using that instead of alcoholism or addiction, but it has to do with the substance use disorder. And you experienced part of that or an aspect of that in an earlier life. And our listeners are going to be very interested in some of the long-term effects, but more so as it relates to helping our listeners overcome or maybe helping someone else before they ever get started into substance use disorder. Joan, welcome back. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Thank you for inviting me again, Ron and Marty.
Joan, recount a little bit of substance use disorder, maybe a little bit of just very top level, what got you started, but then what are some of the long-term effects of it? Where I'm going with this is if a person has I'll use the word propensity, but if they have let's just say, if there's even a possibility they could start indulging to maybe overcome some stress, whatever trauma they may be experiencing. What are some of the symptoms we may look for? And I want to be very careful to our listeners. I'm not trying to be psychic about this. I'm not trying to label anyone. But if you, Joan, through your life experience, can help us with awareness to maybe engage in a person's life to help them not indulge in substance use disorder, all of that would be very helpful. That's kind of a big order to get started, but that's where a lot of our listeners are. What can we do to maybe help someone avoid some of the things you have experienced in life?
Boy, that is a $1 million question.
All right.
We used to say $64,000 question, but I think we've upped it with these days. You are correct in that there are those of us that have you use the word propensity, and I think that's a good word, that there is the possibility that we may end up finding ourselves having a substance use disorder because of genetics, because of environmental influences. Let me try and break it down a little bit. My area of expertise with it is with women. That's because of my association with Women for Sobriety, a nonprofit organization that helped me tremendously as a support mechanism. A lot of people aren't familiar with it because even though it's 50 years old, the focus of it has been on helping women, not on promoting the organization. Someone with an extreme case of SUD, you can tell because they're over drinking, they don't stop at one or two, their personality starts to change. Some become very gregarious and outgoing, and others become more belligerent and angry. That's my daughter. When she drinks, I worry about her because of her drinking, and we discussed it. Because of my propensity for it, I've talked to both of my children. Both of them drink, and my son is more in the I'm going to control it. However, that's that monkey brain in us saying that we can control it. The thought is we're going to go out and just have one or two. Well, for us women, when we go out and we're with people, yes, we may only have one or two, but that doesn't count the number that we had before the event or the amount that we consumed after we got back. A lot of people are surprised some of my friends were very surprised when I said I had a problem with drinking. They're like, well, you don't drink that much. Well, yeah, that's because I hide it. Drink alone. As I mentioned in the last podcast, women drink for different reasons than men. Although I do believe drinking and using is numbing. At some point, and I will say the addiction takes over. It's all we can think about. When are we going to have the next, for some people, it's, the next injection of heroin. For some, it's alcohol. Whatever the substance that we're misusing, we're overdoing. As loved ones, there's not a whole lot we can do to help those that we love, that we see are now succumbing to SUD. It's something they have to do themselves. Nobody could have told me, you need to stop. That was a decision I needed to make. The best thing as family members or friends, if you're concerned about someone who may be in the SUD arena, support them, is to love them, not stigmatize it, encourage them to get help. There are so many support groups. AA is very popular and works for a lot of people. It doesn't work for a lot of women. But then there's also SMART. There's also a Buddhist-based support group as well that doesn't get into the theology or the religiosity that like AA gets into. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
You're doing fine, Joan. Let me ask you a two-part question. One is, I don't know that it's more true with women than men, but is it your experience that some women are more emotional about themselves? And what I'm leading up to, and it's really in the form of it's an honest question. Are women more prone to feeling less about themselves, having a lower self-image, anything of that nature that might lead up to drinking to help the women over the low self-image type thing? And I am not trying to stereotype at all.
And you're not. And and you really did hit the nail on the head. As women, we're marginalized, even in today's society. In our Women for Sobriety program, one of our big focuses is helping women feel competent, capable, caring, compassionate. We have 13 acceptance statements. I'll read you the first one, which is, I have a life-threatening problem that once had me. I now take charge of my life and my well-being. I accept the responsibility. So the first sentence is like the affirmation, and the second is the action step. And so we have 13. When I first came across this organization and read their acceptance statements, I was like, this is what I need. I need this positivity. For example, another statement that I love is, love can change the course of my world. Caring is all important. The last one, which on number 13, which is again one of my favorites, I am responsible for myself and my actions. I am in charge of my mind, my thoughts, and my life. When I saw these statements, I was like, I can get with this program because it's positive focused, but it's also saying I need to do this myself, yet with a sisterhood to support me. For women, I believe firmly having the support of other women going through recovery from SUD is critical.
I want to ask you, my thoughts are a person may be in any of three phases. Pre-SUD, meaning they have the propensity to, they haven't started yet. Then those who are in SUD, in other words, I'm drinking, I need to recover, I've reached that decision point. And then I think of it as post-SUD, that is, get reintegrated into the workforce and so forth, if that person has necessarily had to take time away from work to recover. My question is in the pre-SUD, and I'm now focusing on the word propensity. You mentioned that some women feel marginalized and some men want to put women in that position, particularly the narcissist, my opinion. Joan, I give you that background to ask you, are there traits we can look for? And again, I want to stay away from labeling, stigmatizing, and so forth, but for the person, and maybe the lady, who may, in our opinion, have the propensity to become SUD, is there anything we can do to love on them, to accept them more, develop a relationship with? I'm searching for the terms that may help that woman become more accepting of herself. And can we possibly keep that person away from engaging in SUD? Or does, based on your life experience, does that person need to engage in, hit rock bottom, and then recover? And I'm not sure I can even ask the question in a very intelligent way, but that's just my thinking.
I wish there was a way to do that. It would really help so many. I'm not saying just men, just women, but also men in that pre-SUD phase. If we can give them all of the, I like to use the word, develop a treasure chest with gems in it, because frankly, having a toolkit doesn't thrill me that much. Having a treasure chest of strategies that I can put in my treasure chest, that helps. So it really, really, really starts parenting of young children, because our personalities and our beliefs about ourselves really happen between ages 0 and 7. I've said for decades now, before you drive a car, you have to have lessons, and then you have to take a test to pass. We don't do anything like that for parenting. So parent education of how to raise healthy, when I say healthy, I mean well-balanced children, is critical. Also, what's really important is to give children opportunities to not just excel in school. I mean, there are, I don't know, I think I've read now lately, there are like 11 different types of intelligences. Making good grades is just one type. Offering a variety of opportunities. I'm thinking of the, lower SES, because there aren't a lot of opportunities for grandchildren and all the opportunities that they have. I know a lot of the kids they're going to school with don't have, because of the difference in SES, social economics, status. Giving kids the opportunity, expand their wings to try drama, to try art, to try music, to also what we have found, because I don't know if I mentioned it, but I worked for almost 30 years in the substance use prevention field. My area of focus was drunk driving prevention. It was also alcohol policy strategies and implementing those nationwide, like raising the minimum age to 21. Also, reducing substance use disorder problems among youth at risk. There are lots of community organizations that children at risk, and those are usually children of color, to make sure that, and it's a community. It really does take a village to raise children these days. But what we found was children, even in the worst circumstances one can imagine, if there was one person, didn't have to be a parent, but if it was one person in their life that believed in them, that made a difference.
Right on, Joan. What I'm hearing you say is everyone has strengths. We need to be accepting of. We all come from various SES, socioeconomic strata. Irrespective of what our past has been, we can actually leverage our past and help us into the future. But even if our past has been one that is, let's say, not part of the top 5%, however you may define that, we're not a victim of our past if we can help develop that mindset, but rather we can be a victor to get beyond our past. Some of us tend to focus on our past and believe that whatever has happened in the past defines my future. And my sense, and I have only a sense, Joan, I've never been a sud person myself. I've had a few drinks, but we're basically non-alcoholic. But that's how I'm processing part of what you're saying. I do know in various aspects, if we all have strengths, and if someone, and you were very eloquent in saying, if you surround yourself with someone who believes in you, and it's not just words, they're willing to invest in you, that can totally radically change your mindset in a positive direction and help you believe in yourself. And when we are at that point, we have, I think, a healthy self-image, at least a healthier mental health outlook on ourselves. And Joan, I don't want to try to portray myself as any expert. I'm just verbalizing life.
Well, you're absolutely right. We all have strengths, and capitalizing on those strengths is what helps the feelings of self-worth. One of my favorite programs I developed when I worked for the government was actually a program called, sure you've heard the term, Girl Power.
Yes.
And it was for girls aged 9 to 14. What was fascinating to me when I sat in on a few of the focus groups was girls were saying, and they were actually using the word, We want to feel competent, not confident. You can look in the dictionary. There are two different meanings. They want to know they can accomplish something and feel good about it. What often happens for girls around 9 to 14, that's when society changes, when looking at girls in a lot of households, they're hearing, well, you're just a girl. You can't do that. That is still happening. That's not what girls need to hear at all. Giving kids, and this is going back to that pre-sud phase, because kids are drinking and using now in 4th grade. We can't start too young with our kids. That doesn't mean for those of us who didn't have that growing up, yes, you're right. I like the way you phrase that, going from victim to victor. Where I'm going with this is, if girls and boys don't develop that sense of competence, that is going to affect how well they do in life. But it's also going to, especially if there's that DNA, if there's a family history of SUD, that's not a good combination. Then there is the tendency or possibility for them to really fall into SUD seriously. When I was in my intensive outpatient program, there were a number of young people in the program still in a victim state. This happened to me and that happened to me, and how can I overcome this? And so it really also requires a lot of cognitive changing of thinking, of saying somehow overcoming that victimhood. I was struggling to see if I can find words that one can easily make that shift, but it's usually a process.
One way, I just have a sense, some women have been marginalized, and I'm interested in your opinion. Some women have felt marginalized in the context of, is it better to be a mom or do I have to develop a career? Some women might feel more comfortable, or at least feel comfortable, being a mom, but they feel those around me are telling me that if I can't make it in the corporate world, then I'm less of a person. And our birth rate in the United States is reducing, and it's partly because women feel that, nope, I'm not going to bear children, because if I do, that keeps me away from the workplace, and my surrounds are making me feel that my worth is going to be defined by where I am in the workplace, in the corporate ladder, not as a mom. I don't know that you agree with me, but that is just one of my perceptions that may be causing a downward spiral with some people.
I'd say that may be a piece of it. What I see more of is women trying to do it all, have the career and children, and may also be in a abusive relationship.
Okay, yes.
I wanted to bring that into it as well, because abusers have usually been abused. That trajectory will continue unless there's something significant that happens. I have not heard that as much, Ron, actually, that women are feeling less than if they're not working.
I won't say that that is like a statistically verifiable statement. It's just perception of some. I think what you're saying, and it was a part of your testimony in our first podcast, you need to get away from the abusive or toxic relationship to improve your self-image. That becomes, I think you were saying, a very high priority, and that may take a lot of fortitude to do that, but you have to do whatever you must do to get away from that toxic environment, that abusive relationship, to be able to establish a healthy self-confidence, self-image.
Absolutely. Staying in an abusive relationship is not going to help a woman feel competent, because you're always being put down. I was in an abusive relationship. What's hard to understand is when you're in it, you don't necessarily know this isn't, I don't want to use the word right, but that this isn't healthy. That's where family and friends can intervene and help support the woman getting out of that kind of situation.
What I hear you saying is some women, some people become entrapped I don't know that that's a word you would use, but they are entrapped, and sometimes it takes another person on the outside to observe that, to observe your behavior. And again, I'm not supposing labeling or stigmatizing, but merely describing. And if our relationship is such that we can be very candid, honest, and trustful with each other, maybe somebody can make you aware of who you have become. And through that awareness, you determine the cause is the toxic relationship, which then may give you the courage to depart from that. Again, Joan, you're the expert. I am merely describing what I think you're saying, or at least that's the way I'm processing it.
No, you are absolutely correct. I think you summarized and paraphrased that quite well. What is needed, though, is, again, this goes to the community, is there need to be places that women can go, places that women can go with their children to escape this situation if they're not able to, they're not working. And if they don't have the means to leave and get a place of their own. I want to go back to a minute for a bit into the pre-SUD, because what's interesting, those of us who have fallen into the SUD, into this disorder, there's usually a process that we go through before we stop. There's different stages. It's called pre-contemplation and then contemplation, etc., until we get to the point where often involves, I'm going to control it. Like I said, we might be able to go out and have one or two, come home and go to bed. Not likely, but that is possible. And we can fool ourselves for a while that we have it under control. That's only going to last for a while until it's insidious. It creeps. It gets worse and worse and worse. That's when other people start to notice. In fact, what brought me to my knees, if you will, was I was in a relationship with a man who had a serious SUD. He broke up with me because of my drinking. Now, I wasn't upset because he broke up with me because I knew the relationship wasn't healthy. What brought me to my knees was that I had fallen that far down what I always say, Alice's rabbit hole. I couldn't even look at myself in the mirror. That's when I said, okay, enough is enough. You had asked something earlier, or maybe it was in our pre-discussion, about can someone who has a SUD then drink or use, let's just say, in a healthy way? No, no, because we think we can. It often leads to a relapse. That's what happened to me, which is often part of the recovery process. I thought I could. My alcoholic ex-boyfriend said, oh, you can just have one or two. Why can't you stop? It's actually neurological. Pleasure sensing part of our brain just wants more and more and more. And that's what's driving then the drinking. And what happens and what scared the heck out of me when I relapsed was I was drinking so much more than I was before. As I said, that day he broke up, I was just like, okay, this is it. I was so fortunate. I was at the lowest of low. I didn't even know how I was going to get out of bed. A friend called. She just was like, what is going on? And I told her. She just said, she's in South Carolina, and she said, I don't know how you're going to do it, because she knew I had been drinking and it was the morning. I'm finding you a flight and you're getting on it and you're going to stay with me as long as you need. I call her my recovery angel. I stayed with her for a week, and that's where I put my plan in place that I mentioned in the previous podcast. I found the intensive outpatient program. I found a church. I started quilting. I started yoga, did volunteer work. And I mentioned this before in the other podcast, that when we take something away, we need to put something back. That's what I did. I just filled my life so much that there wasn't time. What's wonderful now and what's so freeing, and those of us in our Women for Sobriety Sisterhood talk about it, who have had a number of years of recovery behind us, is how wonderful it is that drinking doesn't take up real estate in our head anymore.
And what I'm hearing you say, Joan, is you had a friend over some period of time, you had developed trust, and this friend, I'm hearing you say, said, Joan, you come here, you need to be under my care. Not terms you used, but that's what I'm hearing you say. You had that trustful relationship. You followed this person, and it was through that caring relationship you eventually started on the road to recovery. Again, that's what I'm hearing you say.
It was because I had never had anyone in my life believe in me and actually do something like that for me. And that's what started building my self-worth back up. I had someone who believed in me enough to get me a flight and let me stay at her house for, it was a week. Ron, that was a game changer for me. I'm even getting sentimental when I think about it. It was divine intervention.
Joan, I want to say thank you to sharing with us when you got down to your knees, went back, because I was thinking, I want to ask that question, but I didn't know how much you would want to talk about it. I'm happy and thankful that you brought it up, because there may be one woman or many women that are right there and they just don't know what to do because they want recovery. So I really appreciate you bringing that up.
And I'm going to add to that, Joan, thank you for being bold enough to say up to that point, you'd never had anyone believe in you. If we, as a listener, can discern that in other people, such as your friend did with you, Joan, I think that's the point. We need to do whatever we need to do, have the courage, develop the relationship to say, come under my care. We may not use those words, but we're saying, Joan, we believe in you. If we can sense that you're under the domination of whatever other term I may use, that you don't believe in yourself, you have a low self-image, whatever term, but it's something to that effect, and that can lead to a very unhealthy decision. But if we have the courage to reach out and just say, Joan, we care. I want to give you an option, an alternative.
Yeah, I can't tell you what it meant to me. Not to say that I haven't had people in my past who've mentored me and, guided me, but I don't know. There was just something about her she didn't even think. She just said, I'm finding you a flight. You're getting on it. By the grace of God, I got on it. And you're staying with me as long as you need to. I've had plenty of friends who wanted to offer me help by saying, go to AA or whatever. One thing I would like to also throw in is for those whose loved ones you're concerned about, Al-Anon is a great resource. Al-Anon is wonderful. After my father died and my brother died, both from alcohol-related disorder and an incident, that's where my mom found so much ability to go on with her life. I mean, in 2.5-year period, she had her husband and her son die from alcohol. I can't imagine what that would be like. That's incomprehensible to me when I think about it. We've covered a lot.
Yes.
We really have. I really want to put in for any woman who hasn't yet come down to their knees, but maybe close to it or is really concerned. I cannot say strongly enough, check out womenforsobriety.org, womenforsobriety.org. It is an organization of women. We have Zoom meetings, 4 times, 5 times a day now. And I can 100% say there are so many women who want to help each other in a caring. In fact, our motto is we are caring, competent, compassionate, and considerate women. We say that motto at the end of each meeting. If you get that I love this organization, I do, because I mentioned the Buddhist program. There's, like I said, SMART, SMART, which is more cognitive behavioral therapy approach to recovery. Of course, there's AA. Women for Sobriety was what did it for me, for support group. And now I facilitate support groups myself for them.
Joan, let me ask you a final question as we bring this in for a landing. The lady who took you under her care, he told you to get on a flight and ostensibly said there's no other option. You get here. Was she a trained therapist? Did she have a PhD, or was she, I'm going to use the term very jovially, or was she just a regular, normal person who cared?
She was a regular, normal person who cared. We had been, well, at that point, let's see, we've known each other now over 10 years. We were in life coach school. We both got certifications in transformation life coaching together. During that year, we were each other's buddy coaches. Even after the year ended, we still stayed every week. We would coach each other on whatever we were dealing with. So she was a really good friend. Yet she was surprised that I had a drinking problem. How well I hit it.
Yes. Joan, I tell you, on behalf of our listeners, I want to thank you for being very candid, very transparent. I think one of the great takeaways from your testimony is we don't necessarily have to be trained in some sort of specialty to show somebody we care. Just reach out and develop a friendship, a relationship, and that can help turn a person's life around, might even keep a person from making a otherwise less than good decision. But Joan, thank you for your life, your testimony, and reaching out to women to help them overcome or possibly even avoid what you have been through.
Well, I thank you for the opportunity for me to share my experience and my knowledge, and at this age, my wisdom.
That's just great. Thank you, Joan.
Thank you.
We appreciate having the opportunity to share our and our guests' life experiences with you.
The Cooper culture advances organizations to achieve and sustain high retention rates, connected communication, and trust through personality insights and principled leadership. You can contact us at our website, thecooperculture.com, and you can contact us directly at ron@thecooperculture.com or Marty, MARTY, at thecooperculture.com. We work with you to help assess aspects of your culture to advance the environment and people to their best performance. We do that through our staff of certified personal performance coaches, leadership trainers, keynote speakers, and DISC personality behavior experts. You can book a speaking engagement directly through our website by contacting us at ron@thecooperculture.com. We look forward to sharing our life experiences with you, some of which are profound, some of which are pretty funny. Some of those life experiences are ones we'll never do that again because we've been through stuff. We truly look forward to working with you, speaking with you, helping advance you in any way that we can.